Typically, our videos are about QuickBooks tips and tricks, and that's probably what you're used to. Today, I'm bringing on a good friend of mine who I said, please, 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 when I found out about his new book, I said, you gotta come chat with my audience. They're gonna love this, gonna help them so much. So if we've never met before, hi, I'm Candus Kampfer, and typically I love to teach business owners and bookkeepers how to create confidence with QuickBooks. But today we're talking about your money machine. So whether you're wanting to start investing, you have a little bit of money to put away, or maybe you're in debt and you're going, I just need some tips to keep moving, then this is for you. My friend Mel Abraham is a CPA, and he's not your traditional CPA. He sees the world differently. Come and check it out. And here's some funny little stories that I share along the way, and hear more from Mel. So stay tuned. Let's get started.
Oh, Candus, thanks for having me. This is going to be fun.
Yeah.
I get to have a conversation with another numbers nerd.
We love chatting. Whenever Mel and I get together, we're actually friends in real life too. We always talk about finances, but we also talk about some of the other things that really matter, which is life, our family, and the impacts that we want to make, which is one of my favorite parts of getting to know you, Mel. And because the first time I met you, I remember being like, Mel Abraham. And then what I learned very quickly is how big of a heart you have and how much you want to impact other people and their lives. And finances is a piece of that. And that's one of the things I love to do as well. So a little bit of kindred spirits, I feel like.
Yeah, for sure.
So I have a few questions for you because I really want people to understand more about why you chose to put your heart and all of your education and like the things you've learned into this book that can make a difference in people's lives. So I have a few questions. Are you ready?
I'm good. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you guys probably know I'm a mom. I have two boys. And one of the first things that you start off in the book talking about is the presence over profits. And it really hit me. And I wanted you to share more about what that means and why it matters.
For me, I was an entrepreneur. I was a single full-time dad, raising my son from 5.5 years old. And I got that traditional upbringing. You hustle, 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 and hustle culture. That's fine. And you think that you're doing the right thing, and there's ways to justify it or rationalize it and say, I need the profits. And that's really what came to me was at the hands of a 6-year-old boy, my son. One day he came running in and saying, Daddy, I drew a picture of you at school today. And at the time I was building my firm, I was building my practice, and I was working a lot. I was traveling and speaking a lot. I was doing all the things that I needed to do to get clients and build a brand. And so when I kneeled down to look at this picture, he drew this picture that I'm thinking I'm going to see us playing ball. I think we're going to be at Disneyland and all this, and all I see is me standing in front of two computer screens and a phone in each ear and one on the desk ringing. And it was like a mirror into your soul. Because I so wanted to be such a good dad. And in that moment, I felt like a failure. In that moment, I realized that, man, the greatest gift I was given to be a father, I was messing it up. But perception, I was thinking I was doing the right thing. And it would have been really easy for me to sit back and say, hey, kid, but we need the profits. We need the profits because it's the profits that allow us to have the roof over our heads and to do the things that you want to do, but we weren't doing the things he wanted to do. And if a 5.5-year-old, 6-year-old boy understood what profits were, my guess is he would have looked up at me and said, I don't need your profits. I need your presence.
I think this matters more than most people know because I know that the journey of entrepreneurship is that a lot of us have to hustle to get it started.
Yeah.
Then after a period of time, that hustle kind of sticks with us. It's something that I actually really sat with for myself in the last few years. It's like, it took a lot to get this started, but what am I giving up and what can I change now so I can be more present?
Yeah. So this is a huge distinction I think that people miss. And we can get caught up in, the adrenaline rush of the chase. At the time that this happened, I had a lot of people going, hey, Mel, you better get work-life balance. And balance isn't what we're really striving for. When you start to think about balance, or the way I saw when they were talking about work-life balance is either one where there's equal parts of everything, or balancing where you have one weight and a counterweight playing tug of war. But either way, it's unrealistic or it's causing friction. And I realized really quickly that balance isn't what we're striving for. It's harmony. And harmony is a result of being intentional in each moment. And so what I started to look at is that I had to be intentional with my time. I had to be intentional with what I was going to do. And so with Jeremy, for instance, and I didn't really talk about it in the book, but he needed to know that Dad was there. He needed to know. It didn't mean that I wasn't going to work hard and I wasn't going to. So what I did is I created a calendar. And on that calendar, this large calendar, that there was red zones, and those red zones were all his. He knew they were immovable, and he knew intentionally and in advance that he had time with Dad. And he also knew that any other color on the calendar he could turn red if he needed it. It wasn't like all of a sudden I stopped working. I just communicated intentionally and gave him the knowing that this happens. And I think we as entrepreneurs, there's going to be seasons of our entrepreneurship. There's going to be seasons of our life where it's got to be, my book is releasing this. So I sat with Stephanie, my wife, and everything. I said, I have a season. It's 90 days. There'll be more beyond it, but in this 90-day season, I'm hyper focused on this. So there's no balance there. There's intent. And I think that when we communicate and we know that that's the season, and when we get out of that season, we'll move to another season, we can find harmony in that journey. The tendency is what you said, is that we run at that 5,000 RPMs and we just stay there and we just keep going. And we don't have the brakes, and we're not being intentional. And all of a sudden we're running a race that we didn't intend to run.
Yeah, I think that happens to a lot of entrepreneurs because we want freedom and then we get trapped and we don't have freedom, which is why I love that you share more about that in your book, about like, how do we truly create? Because in the end, we want to make an impact in the world, but we also want to have the financial means to live a certain quality of life, right? Which is a lot about what you share. And before we talk a little bit more about the book, I want them to understand a little more about you, because yes, you're a CPA, yet you don't think and have your philosophy is so different than a traditional CPA. And I want you to share a little bit more about your viewpoint and how you got to this place and how you're different.
Yeah. So nothing against CPAs, but
right.
My education as a CPA taught me to get a job and be broke. I mean, that's really what it did. It didn't talk about wealth. It didn't talk about freedom. In fact, what do they teach you? They teach CPAs to swap hours for dollars. It's the worst business model in the world. They basically say, you went and got this education. You went and took a 4-day test. Now, when I did it, there was no calculators. You had to do it all by hand. And it was with those little blue books. I see one of them blue books and the hair on my neck just stands up. And so you get this valuable education, and then you go out into the world and commoditize what you have. So the only way to earn, the only way to grow would be to run faster, longer, harder on the treadmill. And the only thing that actually guarantees is breakdown, burnout, and disaster. And so we're not taught the money side of things. And I realized when Jeremy drew this picture that I had to do money different, that there was something missing. And what was missing was this thing that I realized, as long as my earnings, my income streams are directly tied to my efforts, I will always be on the treadmill. I will never find the freedom. I will never have choice in my life other than the choice of how fast, how long, or how far I wanted to run on the treadmill. And so I said, there has to be a way to separate over time the income from the efforts to earn it. Because until you do that, you are imprisoned by the income, by the pursuit, if you will. and I didn't come from money. You know, my dad came here to this country at 17 years old with nothing to get an education. He became an aerospace engineer, so you know he had a decent wage. We had what we needed. We lived in the same house all our lives. We had one home that they bought in 1958 for like 20 something $1,000, you know, and we sold it, you know, 6, 7 years ago. It was the family home, but so I didn't come from money. I had to figure this out, and I screwed it up plenty of times. Um, but what was driving me was not the money as much as what the money would allow me to do, to be there and stop work at 2 o'clock so I could be at Jeremy's practices and his games and just have that choice, have that flexibility and do that. And so that's kind of the journey. It's like I came from nothing. I built something. I lost it and then I rebuilt it. And I think that I hope that people that watch anything I do or read the book or anything will understand, no matter your age, stage, or circumstance in life, that financial freedom, mastering your money is possible. Now, some of us might have steep hills to climb, or we have big boulders to push. That only makes it difficult. It doesn't make it impossible. And so I look at it and say, it's within grasp of everyone, because I didn't know it. I didn't understand it. I didn't get trained in it. I didn't get taught it, and I didn't inherit it. And in fact, there's a statistic, 10,000 millionaires were surveyed, 79% were first generation. That's like 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10, that meant that they didn't inherit it, it wasn't gifted, they didn't win it. They created it in their lifetime. 8 out of 10 is pretty good odds, you know? The other thing that study showed was that 31% of them never made much more than $100,000 a year. So it wasn't making a ton of money that did it, and it wasn't that they inherited that did it. It was what they did with what they made that did it.
That's what I love about what you have in your book I, as a trained teacher and educator at heart, love that even things I've gone through with you, you go through and you break down like, okay, where's this? Where are you at? Where are you at? And it's, okay, so funny little story that I have to share. Jonathan isn't here. He's my husband, but we're still going to share it anyway. Mel knows because we've talked about this personally. So my husband is always like, let's talk about money. What are we going to do with it? And I'm always like, I teach QuickBooks. I know our profit and loss. I know our balance sheet, which Mel talks about in his book as well. I know all that stuff. But when it came to figuring out investing, when it came to figuring out what I wanted to do next with our money, I always like had this block. And so I went through one of Mel's trainings and I sat down, he shares it with the book. So like, you can get this in the book, highly recommend it. And you go through and you figure it out, and it takes your brain. And instead of it being this abstract thing that you're like, what do I do next? It's very step by step. And so after I went through and did all this, and it's covered in the book, I went to my husband. I was like, okay, so now let's talk about money. I want to do all this stuff. And he's like, why did you have to ask Mel, which he also personally knows, why couldn't you just ask me? And I was like, I don't know. It's just, you're my husband, right? The thing I appreciate about you is that you break things down into such simple step by step, because before, and I think you would agree with this, is before you can start there, you got to figure out where you're at and where you want to go, which is what the book is about, is like, where are you? Where do you want to go? And so often I think you're speaking to that, people think that they have to have so much. They don't have enough to be able to do this. Yeah. And can you share more about how you can get started? Anyone can get started now. They don't need to wait.
Yeah. So here's the first thing to realize. You can't win the wealth game sitting in the stands or the sidelines. You actually have to be on the field. Second is that statistic I gave where it was only $100,000 or so that they made a year, really shows that it's about what they did with the money, which is a behavior, which is a habit, which is a choice, which is a decision. So when someone says to me, hey, I got some money issues, I said, no, you don't have money issues. I go, what? I go, you have money symptoms. They're symptoms of the choices, behaviors, and decisions of the past. Now, some people, they get offended. They go, oh, it's confronting. I said, no, it should be empowering, because all we got to do is give you the different behaviors, the choices and decisions, and you can get the same results. There's plenty of people that made a lot of money and ended up broke. Burt Reynolds, Nicolas Cage, Mike Tyson, I mean, Willie Nelson. I can go through a whole list of them. Some of them are still broke, some aren't with us anymore. But the point is that we mistakenly believe in order to build wealth, I need to have a lot of money. You don't. You actually need to have the right behaviors. Then the money will follow. So this is why at the very beginning, all I want to do at the very beginning with people is say, just get out of the stands, get off the sidelines, get on the field. Even if all you can put away is $5 a week, okay, you're not going to get wealthy off of it. But what you are doing is developing a habit, developing a muscle, developing the process. And over time, that 5 will turn into 10, turn into 100, turn into 1,000. Now, all of a sudden, you're starting to deal with real numbers. But the tendency is to say, when I make more, then I'll get in the game. And I promise you, if you didn't develop the habits when you first start out, even with little money, you won't develop them when you have big money. And so I just want people to just get started and just get on the field. And if that means $5 going to a high yield savings account, then so be it. That's all it is. But at least now all of a sudden you have a process in place that we're not stalled and we can now move and adjust from there.
Yeah. And you also share, you guys get the book. It's like the best $30. It's less than $30. And it's going to be you're wasting way more money on other things. Trust me in this. It's going to make a difference. It did for me and it can for you. With that being said, I want to share about, just like in business and in anything, when you first start, you don't necessarily always see like that $5. Somebody's like, okay, but $5, where's it going to get me? So they're thinking, I'm not even going to do the $5, which you're talking about it being a habit. But I think what we can speak to, and both of us have YouTube channels, it's like when it first starts, you're like, or anything in business, you're like, what is going on? But you have to stick with it. And can you share a little bit more about how this impacts even in the process of creating wealth?
One of the mistakes that a lot of us will make is we actually think that our wealth creation is linear. It's not. So let's say I want to make, all of a sudden I want to make $1 million. I want to have $1 million net worth. So the first thing is this. Your first $100,000 is the most difficult of wealth. And why is that? Because you don't have the habits, you don't have the skills, you don't have the thinking, you don't have the process, you don't have any of that. So it's all brand new. And and I'm going to throw some numbers at you because there's something called the wealth flat line. And every single person, no matter what side of the tracks they're on, no matter, sex, skin color, doesn't matter. Every single person has to pass through the wealth flat line to find themselves at a place where they build wealth. And what the wealth flat line is where you are doing what you just said, putting money away, $5, $10, $100, $1,000, and you're doing it regularly for 5-6 years. And you're going, after 5-6 years, you look and say, I made $67. I didn't make much. This is stupid. This guy, Mel, he's an idiot. Why am I following him? And it's like, no, what you're doing is you're compressing a spring. And when that spring is released, when you hit the tipping point, it rockets up. Let me show you some numbers or I'll walk through it. To make your first $100,000, let's assume that you're going to put $10,000 away every year at 8%, which is an S&P 500 index fund. We can get it all day long, historical numbers, okay? So $10,000 a year at 8%, it will take you 7.6 years to make your first $100,000. And you keep doing that because you want to get to the million. It'll take you 20.6 years to get to $500,000. So now you're 20 years in. To get to $500,000, took you 7.6 years to get the first 100,000. To get the second $500,000, to get you that last half, it only takes you 7.5 years. The last 500,000 you make in less time than it took you to make the first 100,000. And what happens is that you ate up the wealth flat line and you reached the tipping point and you got to what I call the acceleration zone. And it's the subtitle of the book, where your money's working harder for you than you did for it. And the challenge is that we don't have the patience to get there. Now, does that mean it's always going to, you need 20 years? No, I just said, let's just assume 10,000 at 8%. We can go far faster if we are really diligent about it. But the point is that until I get in the game, there's only one thing that will eat up that wealth flat line. It's a 4-letter word, and it's time. I have to get in, and I have to start that clock running. And I have to stay in the game and be patient, because that compression of that spring is what you're doing. And when it's released, now all of a sudden, instead of making 100,000 in 7.6 years, I make 500,000 in 7.5. That's the power of it.
Yeah. And what would you say to those people out there that are like, I'm in debt? Like, I get that you only put $5, but I owe all this. Like, where do they start?
And look, there's a fair number of people right now in debt when you look at the data and the statistics. So the first question I think we need to ask ourselves, are you still digging? Okay. If you're going further into debt each month, meaning you're digging a deeper hole, we got to stop digging. You cannot get out of a hole when you're still digging. So there's going to be some really critical and maybe confronting difficult choices to make, because you don't get out of debt by going deeper into debt. And so that means that we're going to look at our income, we're going to look at our expenses, we're going to get real critical about what the wants and the needs are. The needs are the things for our survival. It's the food we eat, it's the clothes we wear, it's the transportation, it's the shelter, it's the medical. That's it, bare bones. Now, I truly don't believe that you'll find richness in life through deprivation, but there may be a season in which we have to retool and figure some things out. So in the long term, my intent is for us to live a rich life that we can afford and that is paid for. But at the very beginning, if I'm in debt and I'm still digging, I got to stop. And if we have problems stopping, it's a behavioral issue. And that means that we take some extreme measures. I have literally, with clients in the past, taken their credit cards and said, giving them a coffee can, okay? Put water in it, put the credit cards in it, and froze it. And I said, you leave this in the freezer. The next time you want to make a purchase, you can take the coffee can out of the freezer and let it defrost. And if you still want to make the purchase once it's fully defrosted, go for it. If not, put it back in the freezer. And now it's a metal can, so you can't put it in the microwave to defrost it, and don't put it under hot water because you're cheating yourself. And so, I mean, those are extreme measures, but if we really want to get past it, we got to do some things. And they go, and I'm not one that says cut up all your credit cards. Not all debt's the devil. I don't buy into that, but it can bury us if we're not careful. Second, if I'm not digging anymore, and I'm on stable ground, but I'm carrying debt. Maybe I have a student loan that's been with me, or I fell on hard times and I put stuff on a credit card and I'm just trying to get out of that. Then again, we get you on a debt pay down plan. And I have a worksheet. It's a Excel template that literally you can use, and it's free. You can go to melabraham.com/no debt and just put your stuff in. Get yourself on a payment plan that you can see when you're going to get it paid off and what payments you're going to make to which card and everything, because we do want you out of debt. Now, I said not all debt's the devil, but all debt has two personality traits, whether it's good debt or bad debt. The two personality traits is all debt costs. It's called interest. The second personality trait is all debt stresses. It stresses your finances and it stresses your mind. And so we need to understand that's the case. Now, the destructive debt is the thing that I want you out of. The destructive debt is the stuff we're using to finance our lifestyle. It is the consumables. It's the big screen TVs. It's the luxury vacations. It's the car that you have to finance over 10 years because you can't afford the payments. Okay? That's beyond your means. And I don't mean it in a judgy way. I mean it in a really caring way, because and what's happening out there is the reason they gave us credit cards is not to give us credit. The reason they came up with payments is not to give us credit. The reason they're doing this, they're brilliant marketers, is to remove the friction from the buying decision. Because you go on a car lot, and the first thing they ask you is, what kind of payment are you looking for? Because then they play the payment game. And literally you are cutting your financial future off one digit at a time, one payment at a time, because it's like boiling that frog. And we don't realize it. So the reason that they're doing this is to make it easier for us to make the decision to buy. And so we need to be aware of that. So destructive debt is for lifestyle stuff. That's a no-no. That's something that we stop. That's something we don't do. If we can't pay for it at the rate of cash, then we don't pay for it. Okay. And then productive debt, though, is okay. Productive debt is the debt that you go into that's going to generate additional cash flow or build wealth. So it could be a mortgage on a rental property, or it could be a loan against a piece of equipment that is going to increase in efficiency or productivity. It could be using a credit card for Facebook ads that you're going to get a multiple back on sales. But the point is that there is a return on investment there that allows you to do that. And so I'm okay with productive debt. I'm not okay with destructive debt, because it will bury you, especially in a high interest rate environment like we're here. So all of this leads down to this. We have to have a plan. The tendency today, especially if someone's feeling the pinch, is if I don't look at it, then I don't have to deal with it and I won't feel the pain. Y'all, just so we're clear, you stick your head in the sand, when the train hits, it's still going to hurt. You just don't see it coming. Okay. And so what I want us to do is to be conscious and aware. I'm typically never someone that's going to say, don't buy this. All I want to do is make sure that you're fully intentional, conscious, and aware of the purchase, the cost of everything. A 23-year-old kid cuts my hair, and he knows what I do. So we have a conversation one time when I'm in there, and he says that his friend just bought a $5,000 watch. And I said, oh, cool. Does he? And I like watches. Okay. And I said, does he make a lot of money? He says, no, he's like 21 years old. I said, so why would he spend $5,000 on a watch? He says, because his friends thought it was cool. I said, I said, let me do some math for you. Every dollar you put away at 20 years old will turn into $80 or more by the time you're ready to retire. I said, so he spent $5,000 on a watch to impress a couple of dudes that probably won't be in his life in a couple of years. Now, in my world, I look at it and go, yeah, it's a cool watch, but I also pissed away $400,000 of my nest egg to impress a couple of dudes that won't be in my life. And I don't mean not to buy it. I just mean that if he understood that, would he have still made that decision? Maybe. But if he's conscious and aware of it and he does it, okay. But the tendency is that we're not conscious and aware. Now, a couple things to think through is that it sounds like I'm saying don't do things. But what I am saying is that don't do things that are momentary pleasures. I also believe that, there are commentators out there that say you're going to be on corned beef hash and mac and cheese until you get out of debt. Y'all, if you do not enjoy the path to financial freedom, you will not enjoy the destination. So, but the question is, where does that joy come from? And what we are allowing into our life is temptation and momentary pleasures to drive things. And then we wonder why the day after we made the purchase, there is no more joy. And part of that is what I say is that we have not defined our joy points. Each of us have 2, maybe 3, maybe 4 max visceral, long-term sustainable joy points, things that we just absolutely love. And, from Stephanie and I, my wife and I, it's traveling. And we don't travel on Spirit Airlines. Okay. We travel nicely. And so in the plan, we make sure that is part of the plan. We make sure that we're getting that we put it in. So I want to fund the real joys that really matter. So we are enjoying the journey along the way instead of being like swiping and buy. There's a reason I got a $900 coffee maker in that kitchen, because I was on Instagram going, that looks cool. I can order a coffee from an app sitting at my desk. I'm in. It's like having Starbucks in the kitchen. And I'm like going, But that was a momentary pleasure. Yeah, I like coffee. Did I need it? No. Was it part of the plan? No. Could I afford it? Yes. So it was okay. I mean, I had to explain it to the wife, but so I think that that's the thing that we need to be aware of, to be intentional. Just like I did with the calendar with Jeremy, I have to do the same thing with the money. The calendar with Jeremy was to give him a vision of what his future was going to be like with his dad. You realize that you have to do the same with your money. Before it ever is earned, you should give it a job description. You should give it a path, and you should know. Then you eliminate the impact of temptation.
Yeah, I love this because really putting your card in the freezer, like how many people think of that? But the impact it truly makes in your long term and making your machine, your money machine. I think so many, Mike, honestly, I wish people knew this sooner. And I hope that you can pass this along to other people, because even my 13-year-old is always saying, like, Mom, he loves, you can tell that he's raised by kind of unique parents, because what he wants for his birthday is silver or gold. He's like, or not gold, but like silver. Will you give me a silver coin? And he talks to us a lot about like investments and what's he going to do with his money and those kinds of things. And I think the sooner we can start these conversations or stop avoiding them, the quicker we can make change. And a lot of your book's about making your money machine. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to share about why you wrote it and who it's really for?
The reason I wrote it is because I mean, in a short sense, is I saw the need. But more importantly, I saw the power of it. Jeremy highlighted the need for the money machine, for me to have freedom, for me to be able to have flexibility, to have a life that I had choices, and that it was defined by choices and not demands, a life that I get to live instead of have to live. And so he put me on that journey. But in 2019 is when I saw the power of it all. Because in 2019, as you know, they found a 5-centimeter tumor in my bladder and looked at me and said, you have cancer, and you might lose the prostate. We might have to do something with the kidney. And if it's bad, you lose your bladder, and it's cancer. So life's on the line. So I looked at that and I said, well, I got to fight. I got to fight. And so I shut down my businesses. I shut down everything I was doing so I could just focus on the fight. I had to fight the cancer medically and physically and psychologically, energetically, spiritually, all of it. But I didn't have to fight it financially. I had the option to see whatever doctors I wanted to, the gift, the privilege, whatever, the blessing, however, to do the treatments. What I don't know how it would have worked out if I had to fight for a living during the day and then fight for my life during the night. And the money machine, the separation of my ability to earn from the efforts to earn it, allowed me to say, shut everything down that require my efforts, because my efforts are going to surviving and thriving and beating this. And now allow the machine, the assets, and everything that we built to pay the bills. Not by eroding the machine, not by draining a savings account, not by selling stuff, not by downsizing, but allowing it to just fund it because it can generate the cash because it was built the right way. And so literally I could shut everything down. Our life changed because of the cancer, but financially it didn't change. And the machine, in fact, grew during that time, even though I was taking money out of it. And so the importance of it, because 2019 is when I got diagnosed. 2020, the pandemic hit, and so many people were struggling financially. And I realized that if they just understood some of the principles, the simple principles, and were willing to do the work consistently, the pandemic would have not left a mark. The pandemic wouldn't have impacted them. A health situation wouldn't impact them financially. My mom is 90 plus years old. She's been on dialysis 6 years. She's in a care facility and it costs $15,000 a month. And she's like, how much money do I have? I said, don't worry about it. That's what the money machine does. It gives us the opportunity. Now, I'm not saying it's easy, but it is simple. And even if it's difficult, does that mean we don't try? Even if I get 70% of the way there, to give me 70%. The ultimate purchase we can make in our life is our own freedom. Our ability to control our time, our ability to have choice in every moment of our life. is what we actually are after, the peace of mind. And I think so that's really why I wrote it, because I saw so many people. I keynoted a conference, 2,400 people, and I spoke, and then the promoter said, hey, we got some time, you want to do some Q&A? And I did the Q&A. I came off stage and it just felt heavy. And he says, what's wrong? And I said, do you feel the pain in their voices, the angst, the anxiety, the uncertainty? He said, yeah. I said, I got to help them. But I can't. I don't have the bandwidth. I'm not building a book of business. I'm not trying to get a bunch of clients. It's not what I want to do in this season, but I want to help. And he says, so what's the answer? And I said, I got to write the book. I got to open the conversation around money, and the opening volley, the easiest access point is a book. And so that's how this book got written, and why it got written was because I don't want people to live in pain or uncertainty when I don't think they need to.
Yeah, it makes a big difference to me because I know you personally and I've watched your journey, and the fact that you've taken the time to write a book, to take all the knowledge, experience, and life and package it in a simple step-by-step process that people can learn, gift to someone else that they know also would like. I'm so proud, so to speak, but also honored to get to ask you these questions, and that you were able to get through your journey and be on the other side and be able to take all that you've learned through. He shares about his Ponzi schemes he's went through, how he lost money. All of it's in the book. That's why I say, like, you got to listen to it. It's well worth it. But you are this wealth of knowledge and expertise and kindness all wrapped up that I think people just have the opportunity to learn from you is a gift that I as your friend am honored. And I'm telling you guys, like, even the simple tip he like threw it out there, but you may not have heard it, was the high yield savings. Like, you gave me that tip when I was for a business. So often you guys ask me questions like, I have this amount of money sitting here. And Mel told me, he's like, it's not the best thing to have it sitting there in your business bank account all the time. Go do a high yield savings. Go do these things. There's so many little tips that he's throwing out that you don't realize can be game changers for your life and for the legacy. We talk a lot, the two of us talk a lot about legacy, and Mel talks about how much that matters to him. And this book is your legacy, and it's going to change a lot of lives. So share with them where they can go. And you guys aren't willing to spend $30 to change your life. It's crazy to me. You just don't have a few coffees. Okay. Yeah. Don't have a few coffees. That's all it takes. But share with them where they can go, and about the pre-orders so they can get some extra special bonuses. Please tell them.
Oh, thank you. So you go to yourmoneymachinebook.com, yourmoneymachinebook.com. On there, you're going to see links to the different booksellers, and you can buy it at Amazon and all that stuff. But why I want you to go to that page is then you can come back to the page once you buy the book, put your information in, so I can give you some additional bonuses and gifts for pre-ordering, for being part of it and getting in it early with me and believing in me. And the reason for this is this: you buy the book, I want you to buy the book. Okay, just like Candus, I want you to buy the book. But buying the book will maybe help me get on a bestseller list that actually doesn't matter, okay? And we'll probably put a few dollars in Jeff Bezos' pocket, which, again, doesn't matter. So buying the book isn't enough. Reading the book, though, that'll soothe you. It'll give you hope. It'll give you a pathway. So reading the book isn't enough. Doing the book and integrating in your life, I know will change your life. And so the bonuses and some of the things that I'm giving, it's like over $1,300 worth of bonuses for a $26, $27 book. But the reason for it is the mission I'm on. The mission I'm on a crusade to light the path to financial freedom for 1 million families. I want each and every one of you with me. I can't do it alone. And the way to do it is to make sure that you're doing the book. And so I want to give you the tools and some additional things to make it easier to put it into your life, to disseminate it through your family tree, and to make it part of your life. Because I know that each one of us can be that financial inflection point to our family tree. And they can look back on you and say, dad or mom or granddad or grandma or great granddad, and say, because of them, our existence is different. And that's why I'm doing it the way I am. So yourmoneymachinebook.com. And the book releases on June 11th. That's not the finish line. That's a starting line for a whole new financial destiny for everyone.
Thank you, Mel, for being here. I'm going to link your socials down below as well, so people can come start following you, get to know you, tell you how this book has impacted their life. And Mel's right. It's just as much as like learning QuickBooks. You can watch my tips and tricks, but if you don't actually use it, if you don't go start pulling your profit and loss and actually looking at the reports, it's not doing you any good. And we were like laughing about it, but I was serious. Like I actually implemented what Mel teaches and what you can get in the book and started making pivotal changes so that life is easier, so my children can have a different experience. I love running my business, but I also am thinking about where do I want to be and what do I want to do in the future, right? The legacy for my children, but also all of us never know what the next, just like Mel had cancer, you never know what the future holds. So start making changes today so that you will be there for the future. Thank you for being here. Let us know below what was your biggest aha, and don't forget to check out Mel as well on his socials.